John Miller never thought of himself as special. He grew up in a small town in Oregon, where most people worked at the lumber mill or the fishing docks. After college, he became an engineer at a firm that made parts for satellites. His life was normal, ordinary. That was before the letter arrived. The envelope had the seal of the Global Space Agency on it. John almost threw it away, thinking it was a request for donations. When he opened it, he found an invitation to join a program called Class Alpha X. The letter said very little about what this program was, only that he had been selected based on specific psychological and neurological markers. At the bottom was a phone number to call if he accepted. John called the number that same night. 2 weeks later, he stood in a large white room with 29 other humans. They were a mixed group. Some looked like soldiers with short haircuts and perfect posture. Others seemed more like John, civilians with confused expressions. Nobody spoke much as they waited. The door opened and a woman in a crisp blue uniform walked in. She had short blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I am Captain Lara Winters," she said. Her voice filled the room without her seeming to raise it. "Welcome to training facility, Epsilon 7. You 30 candidates have been selected for class Alpha X, an experimental combat unit." Murmurs spread through the group. Combat unit? John had never even been in a fistfight. Captain Winters continued, "For those of you who don't know, humans are considered physically weak by galactic standards. The Vrikians have natural armor plates. The Molturi can read minds. The Doraxians can lift 10 times their body weight. Humans have been allowed into space as diplomats and scientists, but never as security forces." She walked slowly across the front of the room, looking at each of them. "Class Alpha X aims to change that perception. We believe humans have other qualities that might make them valuable in certain combat situations." A man near John raised his hand. "What qualities?" Captain Winters smiled slightly. "If I told you that, it might affect the results of your training. All I can say is that out of 10,000 candidates screened, you 30 showed the highest potential." She gestured to a row of doors at the back of the room. "You have been assigned individual quarters. Your names are on the doors. Inside, you will find uniforms and training schedules. The first session begins at 05:00 tomorrow. I suggest you rest well. You'll need it." With that, she turned and left, the room filled with nervous conversation as people began to move toward the doors. John found his room quickly. It was small but comfortable, with a bed, desk, and private bathroom. On the desk lay a gray uniform with his name stitched above the pocket, and a tablet showing a training schedule. The first day would include physical assessments, psychological evaluations, and something called species interaction protocols. John had no idea what that meant. As he sat on the bed, someone knocked on his open door. It was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "Hi, neighbor," she said. "I'm Kate Bell. Looks like we're next door to each other." John stood and shook her hand. "John Miller. Nice to meet you." Kate leaned against the doorframe. "So what do you think this is really about?" "I'm a paramedic from Chicago. Nothing special about me that would qualify me for some secret space program." John shrugged. "I'm just an engineer from Oregon. Your guess is as good as mine." "Well, I overheard some others talking. Sam down the hall is ex-military. Olivia worked for a tech company designing AI. We're a pretty random bunch." Kate frowned. "Whatever they're looking for, it's not obvious." "Captain." "Winters mentioned psychological markers," John said. "Maybe it's something in how we think?" "Maybe." Kate checked her watch. "It's already 2,100 hours. We should probably get some sleep if training starts at 5. John nodded. "See you tomorrow." Then, after Kate left, John took a shower and put on the sleep clothes provided. The bed was surprisingly comfortable. As he lay there, he tried to make sense of everything. Why had he been selected? What would they expect him to do? Combat training? He wasn't built for fighting. Despite his worries, sleep came easily. John had always been good at sleeping anywhere, anytime. His friends in college had been jealous of how he could nap through noise and chaos and wake refreshed. At night, he dreamed of stars, not just seeing them as dots of light, but moving among them. In the dream, he felt perfectly at home in. The void between worlds. Morning came too soon. The lights in his room turned on automatically at 0430, and a gentle voice from a speaker said, 30 minutes until first assembly, Candidate Miller. John dressed quickly in his new uniform. It fit perfectly and felt lighter than it looked. When he stepped into the hallway, other candidates were emerging from their rooms, all wearing the same gray uniforms. They gathered in a large gymnasium where several instructors waited. One stepped forward, a man with a weathered face and a scar across his chin. I'm Commander Greg Phillips, your lead instructor, he said. Today we begin to assess what you're capable of. Many of you are wondering why you're here. That's good. Curiosity is essential, but so is focus. Whatever skills brought you here, they remain untested. Our job is to find those skills and develop them. The first tests were simple physical exercises, running, lifting, flexibility. John performed adequately, but not exceptionally. Some candidates, like Sam and a woman named Diane, clearly had military training. They outperformed everyone in physical tests. After lunch came the psychological evaluations. These were stranger. John sat in a small room while a machine scanned his brain. Then a scientist showed him images and asked him to describe what he felt. Some pictures were normal, landscapes, people, animals. Others were disturbing or made no sense. Shapes that seemed to shift as he looked at them, colors that hurt. His eyes, interesting responses, the scientist murmured as she made notes. She didn't explain further. The final session of the day was species interaction. The candidates gathered in a lecture hall where Captain Winters introduced them to two aliens, a Vrikian whose rough, plate-like skin gleamed under the lights, and a tall, thin Molturi with large, pupil-less eyes. These are your allies, Captain Winters explained. But their minds work differently than human minds. Their perceptions, their reactions, even their concept of time can be alien to you. Part of your training will be learning to understand these differences. The Vrikian spoke in a rumbling voice. Humans are physically weak, but we have observed something unusual in your species, a mental flexibility that is rare. If you can harness this quality, you may prove valuable indeed. The Molturi said nothing, but John felt a strange pressure in his head, like someone gently touching his thoughts. When he looked at the alien, it tilted its head slightly, as if surprised. That night, as John prepared for bed, he heard sounds of people crying in some of the rooms. The day had been difficult for many. 5 candidates had already asked to leave the program. John felt tired but calm. Something about this place, about this program, felt right to him in a way he couldn't explain. As he drifted off to sleep, he wondered what tomorrow would bring, and once again he dreamed of stars. 3 months passed quickly at training facility Epsilon 7. Each day followed a strict schedule of physical training, classroom lessons about alien species, and special exercises that the instructors called mental resilience training. Class Alpha X had started with 30 candidates. Now only 18 remained. Some had left because the physical training was too hard. The instructors pushed them to lift weights and run distances that seemed impossible for humans. 2 candidates broke bones trying to keep up. 5 more failed the psychological tests after they had to interact with alien thought patterns. The other 5 simply disappeared overnight. Their names were removed from the roster without explanation. John stayed. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but he never quit. During physical training, he found that his body could do more than he thought possible if he kept his mind calm. In the classroom, he absorbed information about alien cultures and biology easily. Most surprising to John was how well he did in the mental resilience training. These sessions took place in small, dark rooms where candidates wore special helmets that produced strange feelings and visions in their minds. Many candidates came out shaking or crying. John found that if he accepted the strange sensations, rather than fighting them, they became easier to bear. "You have an unusual mind, Candidate Miller," said Dr. Susan Baker after one session. She was the lead scientist for the program, a small woman with keen eyes behind round glasses. "Most humans try to block out alien thought patterns. You seem to flow with them." John wasn't sure how to respond. "It just feels natural, I guess." Today was different. The candidates gathered in a large room with Commander Phillips and Captain Winters. Both looked serious. "Phase 1 of training is complete," Commander Phillips announced. "Today we begin. Phase 2, combat simulations against other species. This will test everything you've learned so far." Captain Winters stepped forward. "The Molturi use telepathic attacks that target fear centers in the brain. Your helmets will provide some protection, but you will feel the effects. Remember your training." The 18 remaining candidates were led to a massive chamber. When the doors closed, the room changed. The walls and floor disappeared, replaced by an alien landscape with red sand and a purple sky. Rock formations provided places to hide. It looked and felt completely real. "This is a neural simulation environment," Commander Phillips's voice came through their helmet communicators. "Your bodies are still in the chamber, but your minds are experiencing this virtual battlefield. The enemies you face will be equally real to your senses." Each candidate was given a weapon that fired energy pulses. They spread out across the landscape in teams of 3. John was grouped with Kate and a quiet man named Dan. "Stay low and watch for movement," Kate whispered as they moved between rock formations. The Molturi can hide their physical bodies, but their mental attacks give away their positions. They had barely moved 50 meters when John felt it, a whisper in his mind, a small doubt at first, then growing stronger. Fear began to build in his chest. Mental attack coming, he warned the others. The whisper became a scream. Horrible images filled John's mind. Death, darkness, failure. His heart pounded and his hands shook. Around him, he heard other candidates crying out. Through blurry vision, he saw Kate drop to her knees, her face twisted in terror. Don fired his weapon wildly into the air before collapsing. The fear was overwhelming. John's vision darkened at the edges. His legs felt weak. But deep in his mind, he remembered Dr. Baker's words during training. Fear is just information. It doesn't have to control you. John took a deep breath. Instead of fighting the fear, he let it exist. Yes, he was afraid. Yes, these feelings were terrible, but they were just feelings. They could not hurt him unless he let them. He focused on his breathing, in, out. The fear remained, but now it was like looking at a storm through a window. It was there, but it was not him got step by step. John began to walk forward. His body felt heavy, but he kept moving. All around him, other candidates were on the ground. Some were unconscious. Others fired their weapons at nothing. A few crawled away, trying to escape the mental attack. John kept walking. The fear pressed harder against his mind, but he maintained that small space of calm awareness. He could feel where the attack was coming from now. Instead of running away, he walked toward it. Behind a large rock formation, he found them, 4 Molturi with their large, pupil-less eyes fixed on him in what looked like surprise. They had not expected anyone to reach their position. John raised his weapon and fired. The energy pulse hit the ground near the Molturi, not to hurt them, but to show he had found them. "Simulation terminated," announced a mechanical voice. The alien landscape faded away, revealing the chamber walls again. John stood in the center, surrounded by his fallen classmates. Medical staff rushed in to help those who were unconscious. Captain Winters and Commander Phillips stared at John with shock on their faces. Behind them, the Molturi observers were talking quickly among themselves. "How did you do that?" "Captain," Winters asked when John was brought to the debriefing room. "No human has ever withstood a full Molturi fear assault before." John struggled to explain. "I didn't fight it. Fighting fear makes it stronger. I just accepted it was there, while keeping a part of my mind separate from it." Commander Phillips looked at the data tablet in his hand. "According to the neural monitors, your amygdala was fully activated. That's the fear center of the brain. But your frontal lobe maintained function. That should be impossible under that level of attack." Dr. Baker studied John with new interest. "This confirms my theory. It's not about blocking alien thought patterns. It's about integrating them without losing yourself." That night, John returned to his quarters to find that many rooms were now empty. Of the 18 who entered the simulation, only 12 had chosen to continue with the program. The others had resigned, unable to face the thought of experiencing such fear again. Kate sat in the common area, her face pale but determined. "How did you do it, John?" "I felt like I was dying, like everything I feared was happening at once." John sat beside her. "I can't really explain it. I just didn't let the fear become me." "Well, whatever you did, they're talking about it. The aliens, too." Kate lowered her voice. "I heard the Molturi saying you have the quality, whatever that means." As John prepared for sleep that night, he wondered what would come next. The training was getting more intense. More candidates would likely leave, but for some reason he felt strangely calm about it all. In his dreams, he once again moved among the stars, but this time he noticed something new. In the darkness between stars, something was watching, something vast and curious. In the dream, John wasn't afraid. He waved to the presence, and somehow he felt it wave back. 6 months into the program, Class Alpha X had only 8 members left. The training had grown more intense each week. They faced simulations of different alien attacks, learned to operate in strange environments, and pushed their bodies beyond normal human limits. John continued to perform well, especially in situations that involved mental challenges. His calm approach to fear and stress impressed both the human instructors and alien observers. Dr. Baker spent extra time studying his brain patterns during and after exercises. "Your brain adapts in unusual ways," she told him during one examination. "When exposed to alien thought patterns, most humans either shut down or fight back. Your neural pathways create new connections instead. You integrate the foreign elements without losing your core identity." John didn't fully understand the science, but he knew that the strange mental exercises felt natural to him. When others struggled with alien concepts, he found them interesting rather than threatening. One morning, Captain Winters called the remaining 8 candidates to a special meeting. The room was filled with important-looking people in both military and scientific uniforms. Several aliens were present, too, including representatives from species John had never seen before. "Class Alpha X has reached its final phase, Captain," Winters announced. "The Galactic Council has approved a new technology for this program, quantum neural interfaces." A scientist stepped forward with a small device in his hand. It looked like a silver coin with tiny blue lights around its edge. "This is a QNI," the scientist explained. "It creates a direct link between your brain and a quantum computer. In theory, this will enhance your cognitive abilities, reaction times, and decision-making processes." Commander Phillips added, "No human has successfully integrated with a QNI before. The alien species who developed this technology have different brain structures than ours. They can handle the data flow. We don't know if humans can." The room grew quiet as the candidates understood what was being asked of them. This was experimental technology. Dangerous. Dr. Baker spoke next. "The procedure carries significant risk. Best case scenario, your cognitive abilities increase tenfold. Worst case. Double quotes. She paused. We could lose you." Captain Winters looked at each candidate. "This is voluntary. If you choose not to continue, you will be honorably discharged from the program with full benefits." By the end of the day, all 8 candidates had agreed to proceed. They were pioneers, testing the limits of human capability. None wanted to turn back now. The procedures were scheduled one at a time, with a day between each to analyze the results. Alan went first. He was the strongest of the group, a former Marine with a confident smile. Everyone expected him to succeed. Alan died on the operating table. His brain couldn't handle the information flood from the QNI. The surgeons couldn't disconnect it fast enough. The remaining candidates were shaken, but the program continued. Carol was next. She survived the procedure, but emerged different. Her eyes stared at nothing, her mind lost in quantum calculations. The doctors said she was technically alive, but no longer present in any meaningful way. Eric, Paul, and Natalie all developed seizures after their procedures. They could function normally most of the time, but under stress, their brains would overload. This made them too unpredictable for field work. They were removed from the active roster, but kept for research. When it was John's turn, Dr. Baker looked worried. "We've modified the procedure based on what we've learned," she told him as he lay on the operating table. "But I won't lie to you. This is still extremely dangerous." John nodded. "I understand. We'll be monitoring your brain activity the entire time. If we see signs of rejection, we'll terminate immediately." "It's okay," John said, feeling strangely calm. "I think it will work for me." The procedure began with a small incision at the base of John's skull. The QNI was placed directly against his brain stem. When they activated it, John felt a rush of information that made him gasp. Colors became more vivid. Sounds separated into individual components he could track simultaneously. His thoughts accelerated, branching into multiple paths at once. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. On the monitors, Dr. Baker watched in amazement as John's brain lit up with activity. Instead of fighting the quantum data or being overwhelmed by it, his neural pathways were adapting, creating new connections to handle the flow. "His brain is reconfiguring in real time," she told the observation team. "I've never seen anything like this." When John woke fully, the world had changed. He could calculate trajectories instantly, predict movement patterns seconds before they occurred, and process information at speeds that approached precognition. The QN I didn't feel like a foreign object. It felt like an extension of himself. Kelly and Ben, the last 2 candidates, also survived their procedures. Like John, they adapted to the quantum interface, though their integration patterns were different. Class Alpha X was now down to 3. The final phase of training focused on using their new abilities. They learned to access databases instantly through their QNIs, to communicate silently over quantum channels, and to process sensory information far beyond normal human capacity. During combat simulations, they moved with uncanny precision. They could predict an opponent's moves, calculate the exact force needed for each action, and coordinate without speaking. What had seemed impossible months ago now felt natural. "You three are the first of a new kind of human operative," Commander Phillips told them. "You're not stronger than other species, but you can outthink them. Your ability to adapt to new situations and integrate foreign concepts gives you an edge that raw power can't match." At night, John's dreams changed. He no longer simply moved among the stars. Now he could see patterns in the void, currents of energy, webs of probability, echoes of events that hadn't happened yet. The QNI was changing how he perceived reality, even in his sleep. The presence he had sensed before was clearer now. Something vast watched from the spaces between stars. Something curious. John wasn't afraid of it, but he sensed that others would be. It existed in ways that normal minds couldn't comprehend. One morning, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Captain Winters called the 3 Alpha X operatives to the command center. Her face was grim. "We've received a distress call from a research outpost in the Cygnus sector," she said. "A routine scientific mission went silent after reporting unusual energy readings. We're sending a response team, and you three will be part of it." She showed them the last transmission from the outpost. The quality was poor, but John could see scientists working with equipment he didn't recognize. And a strange light filled the screen, and the transmission ended. "This will be your first field mission," Captain Winters said. "Your QNs give you advantages in unknown situations, but remember, you're still human. If you encounter hostile forces, retreat and call for backup." As they prepared for the mission, John felt a strange certainty. The thing from his dreams, the presence in the void, it was connected to what had happened at the outpost. Somehow he knew this, and he knew that he was ready to face it. Class Alpha X boarded the transport ship the next morning, along with a security team of Rikian warriors and Molturi scouts. As the ship lifted off, John touched the small bump at the base of his skull with a QNI connected to his brain. Whatever waited for them in the Cygnus sector, he would face it with calm determination. The journey to the Cygnus sector took 3 days. The ship moved through space using technology that John now understood thanks to his QNI. The device in his brain gave him access to vast amounts of information, allowing him to learn things in minutes that would normally take years to study. Commander Phillips briefed the team during the journey. The research outpost was studying faster-than-light travel theory, he explained. They were working on a new kind of engine that could bend space in ways we haven't tried before. John, Kelly, and Ben sat together, separate from the alien security team. The 3 humans could communicate silently through their QNs, sharing thoughts and impressions without speaking. "Something feels wrong about this mission," Kelly said to the others. She was a former police officer with sharp instincts even before the QNI. "I agree," Ben replied. His thoughts had a structured pattern to them. Before joining the program, he had been a chess champion with a gift for strategy. The data from the outpost shows energy readings that don't match any known technology. John shared his own feeling. "Whatever we find there, it's not something we've encountered before." The outpost orbited a small moon in the Cygnus system. From the outside, it looked normal, a collection of connected modules with solar panels extending like wings. No signs of damage or attack. "Life support is still active," reported the ship's pilot. "Atmosphere and temperature are within normal ranges." The response team consisted of the 3 Alpha X operatives, 4 Vrikian warriors, and 2 Molturi scouts. They docked with the station and prepared to board. Each person wore a spacesuit with built-in weapons and sensors. "Remember," Commander Phillips said through the comm system, "this is a reconnaissance mission. Find out what happened and report back. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." The airlock opened, and they entered the outpost. The lights were on, but no one came to greet them. The entry area was clean and orderly, showing no signs of struggle or panic. "It's like they just walked away," Kelly observed. The team moved deeper into the station. In the mess hall, they found meals half-eaten on tables. Cups of coffee were still full, now cold. Personal items, tablets, jackets, a book lay where they had been left. "No signs of violence," said the lead Vrickian, whose armor plates clicked softly as he moved. No blood, no damage to the structure. One of the Molturi closed its large eyes, concentrating. "I sense echoes. Many minds were here recently." There was confusion, wonder, then nothing. They continued to the living quarters. Empty beds with rumpled sheets. Showers still damp. Everything looked normal except for the complete absence of people. John's QNI was processing all this information, searching for patterns. The outpost had housed 27 researchers and support staff, all missing. No signs of evacuation or struggle. It was as if they had simply vanished in the middle of their daily routines. "Let's check the main laboratory," Ben suggested. That's where they were conducting their experiments. The lab was at the center of the station. The door was sealed with a security lock, but Kelly's QNI helped her bypass it easily. The door slid open, revealing a large room filled with complex equipment. And in the center, something impossible. A sphere of light hung in the air where a containment field should have been. It pulsed slowly, its edges shifting in ways that hurt the eyes. Colors that John had no names for moved across its surface. "What is that?" asked one of the Vrickians, his voice tense. Ben's QNI was already analyzing the phenomenon. Some kind of dimensional breach. They were studying faster-than-light theory. They must have torn a hole in space-time. John stared at the sphere. His QNI was feeding him information, but there was something else, a recognition that came from deeper within him. The presence from his dreams. The Watcher in the void. Somehow, it was connected to this. "We should secure the area and call for a science team," the lead Vrickian said. Before anyone could respond, the sphere pulsed brighter. The air seemed to bend around it. And then something began to emerge. John couldn't properly see its shape. It shifted constantly, angles changing in ways that defied physics. It wasn't solid or gas or energy. It existed partially outside normal spacetime. The Vrickians raised their weapons immediately. The entity moved, or perhaps the space around it moved. 2 Vrickians fell, their armor crumpling inward as if crushed by enormous pressure. They didn't even have time to scream. "Fall back," shouted the lead Vrickian, firing his weapon at the entity. The energy blasts passed through it without effect. The Molturi scouts tried to establish mental contact with the creature. Bad mistake. One clutched his head and collapsed, blood pouring from his eyes and ears. The other froze in place, his mind shattered by whatever he had touched. "Retreat to the ship," Commander Phillips ordered through the comm. The remaining Vrickian turned to run, but never made it to the door. The entity moved again, and the alien warrior simply came apart, his body separating into perfectly cut sections that hung briefly in the air before falling. Kelly's QNI overloaded as she attempted to process what she was seeing. The quantum computer could not make sense of something that defied the laws of physics. Blood poured from her nose and eyes as neural pathways burned out. She collapsed. Twitching. Ben was already calculating escape vectors, his enhanced mind working faster than any normal human could. But the numbers kept shifting, impossible to solve. The entity approached him, space warping around it. "It doesn't follow our physics," Ben said desperately through the QNI link. "I can't predict." His message cut off as the entity reached him. Ben didn't die like the others. Instead, His eyes widened in horror as his mind encountered something it could never comprehend. He screamed once, then fell silent, his consciousness retreating deep within his brain to escape what he had seen. John stood motionless. Unlike the others, he didn't try to understand the entity through conventional physics or mental contact. His QNI wasn't fighting to categorize or predict the impossible thing before him. Instead, John opened his mind to it, the way he had opened to the fear during training. He didn't try to make it fit into his understanding of reality. He simply accepted that it existed in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. The entity paused before him. John felt its attention focus on him, curious, alien, vast. Through his QNI, he received impressions rather than thoughts. It had not meant to harm the others. It simply existed in ways that were destructive to three-dimensional life, like a human walking through a spider's web without noticing. John realized that the missing researchers had not been killed. They had been shifted, pulled partially into the entity's dimension when it first emerged. Neither fully here nor there. Slowly, carefully, John formed a response in his mind. Not words, but concepts. He showed the entity that the humans and aliens it had encountered were sentient beings with their own value. He showed it the harm it had caused without meaning to. The entity paused, considering. Then it showed John something in return: how to close the breach, how to prevent others from making the same mistake, and most importantly, how to guide the missing researchers back to their own reality. It took hours. John sat cross-legged on the floor of the lab, his mind joined with the entities through his QNI. Together, they worked to repair the damage to space-time and retrieve the lost people. One by one, the researchers appeared in the lab, confused but unharmed. They remembered nothing of where they had been. When all 27 were back, John showed the entity how to return to its own dimension. The sphere of light pulsed one final time, then collapsed in on itself and vanished. The breach was closed. John sat alone in the silent lab, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen teammates and the confused researchers who didn't understand what had happened. His QNI had recorded everything. The knowledge the entity had shared was now part of him. When the rescue team arrived hours later, they found John sitting calmly amid the destruction. He was the only survivor of the Alpha X team. What happened here? Asked Captain Winters when she arrived with the medical team. John looked up at her with eyes that had seen beyond normal reality. I made first contact, he said simply, and I learned how to let it go home. 6 months had passed since the Cygnus incident. John sat alone in a white room, waiting. The walls were bare, except for a single mirror that he knew was a window from the other side. They were always watching him now. After the rescue team had brought him back, John spent weeks in medical isolation. Doctors ran countless tests on his body and brain. Scientists questioned him for hours about what had happened on the station. Military officers reviewed the data from his QNI again, and again the entity had changed him. Not in any way the scans could detect, but in ways that became clear when he spoke. He understood things now that no human should understand. He saw patterns that others missed. He could solve problems that quantum computers struggled with. He walks among us, but he is not entirely one of us anymore, John had overheard Dr. Baker telling a group of officials. Her voice had been a mixture of awe and concern. The combination of his unique neurological structure, the QNI, and contact with the entity has changed him fundamentally. The door opened and Captain Winters entered. She looked tired but determined. The Galactic Council has made a decision, she said without greeting. You're being released from observation. John nodded. He had expected this. His QNI had calculated a 78% probability of this outcome. What happens now? He asked. Now you help us prepare? Captain Winters sat across from him. The entity you encountered. You said there were more like it? Yes, John said. Many more. They exist in the spaces between dimensions. Most never notice our reality at all. We're like shadows to them, barely there. But sometimes they do notice us. Sometimes. John touched the back of his neck, with a QNI connected to his brain. The researchers at Cygnus accidentally tore a hole between our world and theirs. It will happen again. Other scientists, other experiments. Humans are curious. We keep pushing boundaries. Captain Winters leaned forward. That's why we need you. The Council has authorized a new program. You will help design it. John had seen this coming too. You want more like me. We need more like you. People who can face these entities without breaking. Who can communicate with them? Who can protect humanity when we encounter things we don't understand? The next day, John was moved to a new facility. It was larger than Epsilon 7, with state-of-the-art labs and training areas. Dr. Baker was there, along with Commander Phillips and a team of scientists and instructors. We've been analyzing what made you different, Dr. Baker explained as she showed him around. Your brain structure, your psychological profile, your response patterns during training. We've identified markers that might predict success. How many candidates do you have? John asked. Currently, none. Commander Phillips. Join them. We're still developing the selection criteria. That's where you come in. You'll help us find them. Over the next few weeks, John worked with the team to design a new version of Class Alpha X. His QNI gave him access to global databases, allowing him to search for potential candidates. The numbers were not encouraging. Out of every 1,000 humans, perhaps one possessed the necessary neurological architecture. Out of those, only 1 in 100 would likely survive the QNI integration. And of those survivors, only 1 in 10 might have the mental flexibility to face what John had faced without breaking. We're looking for needles in a global haystack, Dr. Baker said one evening, rubbing her tired eyes. Yes, John agreed. But they're out there. His dreams had changed again. Now when he slept, he could sense those rare minds across the planet. They shone like distant stars, people who didn't know yet how special they were. A college student in Brazil, a farmer in Vietnam, a nurse in Kenya, a child in Denmark, still too young, but with enormous potential. 3 months into the new program, they identified the first candidate. Will Evans was a firefighter from Canada, who had once walked into a burning building to save a family when all his equipment had failed. Witnesses said he had been perfectly calm, moving with purpose while others panicked. He reminds me of you, Captain Winters told John as they watched Will complete his initial evaluation. More candidates followed. Not many, just 7 in the first year, but each showing that same rare quality. They began training under John's guidance. He showed them what he had learned, how to open their minds to the strange and the alien without losing themselves. The QNI procedures were safer now. Dr. Baker had refined the process based on John's successful integration. Still, not all candidates survived. 2 died. 1 emerged with permanent brain damage. The others adapted, each in their own unique way. They won't be exactly like you, Dr. Baker told John after watching the survivors train. Each mind creates different pathways when joined with the QNI. They'll have their own strengths, their own ways of perceiving. John understood this. Uniformity wasn't the goal. Diversity of thought would be their greatest strength when facing the unknown dot. As the new Alpha X team developed, reports began coming in from deep space outposts. Strange phenomena, unexplained energy readings, glimpses of things that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. The boundaries between dimensions were growing thinner in some regions of space. More entities were becoming aware of human presence among the stars. It's happening faster than we predicted, Commander Phillips said during a briefing. We're not ready. We'll never be fully ready, John replied. but we'll adapt. That's what humans do best. 5 years after the Cygnus incident, the first official Alpha X team was declared operational. 4 humans with integrated QNs, trained to face the impossible. John led them on their first mission, investigating a mining colony that had reported shifting reality and strange visions. As their ship approached the colony, John felt that familiar presence. The Watchers in the void were paying attention. Now, humanity had caught their notice, for better or worse. One of his team, a woman named Lisa, looked at him. "I can feel them," she said, "like you described." "They're curious about us." John nodded. "Remember your training. Don't try to understand them completely. Don't fight what you perceive. Just accept it and maintain your core self." The team prepared for landing. John checked each of their equipment personally. They were as ready as they could be. Before leaving the ship, John paused to look out at the stars. So much vastness, so many unknowns. Humanity was just beginning to understand how small they were in the grand scheme of things, but also how unique. "What are you thinking?" Lisa asked. John smiled slightly. "That we're not alone in the universe, but we're also not helpless." The team moved toward the airlock. Whatever waited for them on the colony, they would face it together. And John would lead them, walking calmly into the unknown as he had done before. Other Alpha X teams were in training back on Earth. More would follow. A new kind of human was emerging, one that could stand at the boundary between worlds and not break, one that could look into the abyss and remain whole. John had been the first, the only survivor of the original class Alpha X. But he would not be the last. The door opened, and they stepped forward into their future.